Have you ever smiled at the world while quietly breaking inside? Outwardly, you laugh at the right moments, show up for work, even comfort friends. But when the door finally closes and the noise fades, your chest feels heavy, your thoughts are tangled, and your own silence becomes deafening. We live in a culture that rewards masks. We've learned to perform, "I'm fine," so convincingly that even those closest to us rarely notice the storm beneath the surface. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. Millions walk through life like this, appearing steady while privately carrying burdens they no longer know how to put down. And the truth is, pretending only makes the weight heavier. When you deny pain, it doesn't vanish, it burrows deeper, showing up as sleepless nights, anxious spirals, or that quiet ache you can't explain. You can scroll, shop, binge, or bury yourself in work, but nothing quite numbs the whisper inside. I'm tired. I'm hurting. I need something different. This video is not another lecture to stuff your mind with more ideas. It's an invitation to pause, to breathe, to soften. Think of it less like a classroom and more like a sanctuary. A place where your feelings are welcome, where your pain isn't dismissed, and where your spirit can exhale. For the next few minutes, let this be your refuge. Put aside the pressure to hold it together. Here, you don't need to perform. You only need to arrive, as you are, with all that you carry. Because healing doesn't begin out there, with more achievements, more approval, or even more people telling you what to do. It begins in here, in the quiet chambers of your own heart. Buddhism has taught this for over 2.500 years, that peace and strength are not imported from outside. They're rediscovered inside, patiently waiting for you to return. You don't need to be fixed. You need to remember. And that remembering begins right now. Take a breath with me, not a shallow, rushed one, but a slow, deliberate inhale. Hold it for a moment. Then release. Feel that? Even in 3 seconds, your body shifts, the shoulders soften, the chest opens. That is the first step toward healing, not grand, not complicated, but incredibly powerful. In this journey, we'll explore timeless truths from the Buddha's teachings, not as abstract philosophy, but as living medicine for real lives. Lessons about impermanence, that even your darkest nights eventually give way to dawn. Lessons about meeting pain instead of running from it, because what you acknowledge can transform. Lessons about compassion, silence, presence, and renewal. These aren't theories to admire from a distance. They're practices you can touch and test in the laboratory of your own daily life. But I don't want you to just listen. I want you to experience. That's why, if you stay with me until the end of this video, I will share with you a 60-second ritual, a practice known only to a few. A kind of hidden key that only 1% of people ever truly apply. It's so simple you can do it anywhere, and yet so profound it can shift how you begin your mornings forever. Imagine tomorrow not starting with a rush of dread or the weight of yesterday's regrets, but with clarity, lightness, and an inner voice that says, "Today is mine, today is new." That possibility isn't far away. It's here, within reach, waiting for you. So for now, let your guard down, let yourself be curious, let yourself feel the words, not just hear them. This isn't about becoming someone else, it's about coming home to yourself. And as you walk with me through the teachings ahead, remember, you don't have to do this alone. Every breath you take, every moment you pause, is already proof. You carry within you the very medicine you've been searching for. Stay until the end. The next few minutes may not erase all your pain, but they might just hand you the tools to begin again. And sometimes, beginning again is exactly the miracle we need. Lesson 1: Saw impermanence in everything. Pain warps our sense of time. When you're hurting, minutes stretch and the mind swears, "It will always be like this." Buddhism calls that illusion out with a compact line in Pali. Sab sankhara anicca. All conditioned formations are impermanent. Dhammapada 277. Let's unpack that like a researcher who's spent years with both texts and people. Sab means all, sankhara points to anything put together, moods, bodies, relationships, jobs, even the stories we tell about ourselves. Anicca means not lasting. In other words, whatever is assembled will eventually disassemble, not as a threat, just as a law. Why does this matter when your chest is tight and your thoughts are tangled? Because pain's first trick is timelessness. Under stress, Attention tunnels and the brain overestimates duration. The present hurt looks like the whole horizon. Impermanence punctures that tunnel. It says, this is a state, not your identity, a wave, not the ocean. Grief, panic, or loneliness arrive as weather systems, intense, real, and changing, just as winter yields to spring without your permission. Today's heaviness has already started to move the moment you notice it. Impermanence, however, is not nihilism. People often misread it as, nothing matters, or use it to bypass emotion, it'll pass, so I won't feel it. The canon's invitation is subtler, because things are changing. Feel them fully while they're here and hold them lightly as they go. That middle way, neither clinging nor rejecting, is what later traditions call upekkha, equanimity. Indifference says, I don't care. Equanimity says, I care without clinging. Practically, train your eyes to see change at 3 scales. Micro, breath and body, sit for 1 minute and label sensations with a scientist's curiosity. Rising, staying, passing. That ache in the throat? It flickers. The mind's certainty that it won't end? It, too, shifts. Meso, moods and relationships, chart a recent heartbreak like a weather log for 7 days. You'll notice peaks, dips, and neutral hours your memory edited out. The graph becomes your teacher. Intensity does not equal permanence. Macro, roles and identity, careers, reputations, even long-held opinions evolve. When you remember you're a process, not a fixed thing, setbacks stop feeling like life sentences and start looking like seasons. Impermanence also reorders value. If every conversation, sunrise, and cup of tea is unrepeatable, attention becomes an ethical act. We show up because this moment won't come back. That's why the winter to spring metaphor is more than poetic decoration. It's an instruction. Don't argue with seasons, work with them. In winter, rest and tend the soil. In spring, plant. In summer, cultivate. In autumn, harvest and release. Pain often means you're in a winter of the heart. Forcing summer only deepens the freeze. Meeting winter as winter lets it complete its cycle sooner. 2 guardrails from long study. 1. Don't weaponize anicca against yourself. Get over it. It's impermanent, is spiritual perfectionism in disguise. The point is gentleness, not speed. 2. Remember scope. Dhammapada 277 speaks of conditioned things. The teaching isn't that nothing at all exists, but that what's arisen from causes changes with causes. This nuance protects you from both denial and despair. A simple field experiment you can run tonight. Set a 90-second timer the next time a wave hits. Do nothing heroic, just breathe and label what changes. Location of tension. Thought content. Intensity. Most waves crest and shift within that window. Not because you forced them, but because that's what waves do. Seen often enough, this becomes body knowledge. I'm in a state. And states move. And from there, action gets wiser, one compassionate step. Then another, exactly as winter, without fuss, turns itself into spring. Lesson 2: Facing pain instead of running away. One of the most misunderstood aspects of healing is what to do with pain once it shows up. Our instinct, almost universally, is to run. We distract ourselves with screens, food, noise, or even spiritual platitudes like, just let it go. But every tradition worth its salt, and Buddhism especially, says the opposite. Don't run, turn toward it. Modern psychology has a catchy phrase, name it to tame it. In the language of the Buddha, this is Vedana Sati, mindfulness of feeling tones. When we talk about Vedana, we're not just talking about feelings in the hallmark sense. In the Pali Canon, Vedana refers to the raw flavor of each moment, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, that arises before the mind spins it into a story. Every sight, sound, thought, or memory comes with a subtle charge. If we fail to notice that charge, it hijacks us. If we meet it directly, it loses its power. Think about the last time you felt sadness rising. What was your first move? For many, it's to smile through it, to armor up so others won't notice. The irony is, what you refuse to feel doesn't disappear, it grows roots underground. You can paste a grin on your face, but the sorrow is still humming inside, often louder than before. Buddhist practice invites the opposite gesture: pause, turn inward, and simply acknowledge, this is sadness, this is hurt, That acknowledgement alone is a revolution. In my years of research, both in texts and in therapy rooms, I've seen the same pattern. When you label an emotion clearly, the nervous system calms. Brain scans show that naming an emotion lowers amygdala activity, the part that drives fear and reactivity. It's as if the mind whispers, "Ah, I've been seen. I don't need to shout anymore." The Buddha didn't use fMRI machines, but he observed the same thing through direct practice. By watching feelings arise and pass in meditation, he saw that what is acknowledged loses its grip. Now, here's the nuance. Facing pain doesn't mean wallowing in it or glorifying suffering. The middle way is to neither suppress nor obsess. You give the hurt its rightful seat at the table. Listen to what it has to say, and let it finish its sentence. Often the message is simple. Pay attention to this wound. Or, remember you still care. By meeting it, you stop fighting yourself. That's why the Buddha said, in effect, that what we refuse to feel will never fully heal. Let's make it practical. The next time your chest tightens or a lump forms in your throat, resist the reflex to push it away. Instead, breathe once and say out loud or in your mind, "This is grief." Or, "This is anger." Watch how the act of naming separates you from the overwhelm. You are not the emotion, you're the one noticing it. That tiny shift, from "I am sad" to "I notice sadness," is already liberation in miniature. And there's something tender here too. Emotions are not enemies to be conquered, they are messengers at the door. Anger might be pointing to a boundary crossed. Sadness might be mourning a loss you haven't honored. Fear may be asking for safety or preparation. When you slam the door in their face, they only pound louder. When you open it and say, "I see you," the pounding stops. Sometimes the messenger even leaves quietly once it's been heard. I often tell students, imagine pain as a child tugging at your sleeve. If you keep scrolling your phone and ignoring it, the tug becomes a scream. But if you kneel down, look into its eyes, and say, "I'm listening," the child softens. That's exactly how the psyche works. Recognition is soothing, denial is fuel. So, the next time you feel tears rising, don't hide them behind a practiced smile. Pause, place a hand on your chest if it helps, and name it. This is sorrow. This is hurt. In that simple act, you're not collapsing into pain, you're reclaiming agency. You're saying, "I'm here for myself." And paradoxically, the moment you stop running from pain is the moment healing begins. That's not weakness, that's honesty. And honesty, as every seasoned practitioner knows, is the doorway through which transformation finally walks. Lesson 3: Practiced compassion toward myself. One of the most radical truths in Buddhist thought is also one of the simplest. Attā, attano, nātho. One truly is one's own refuge. Dhammapada 160. For years I read that line as a scholar. But only after watching people wrestle with shame and self-criticism did its weight become clear. Most of us are taught to direct compassion outward, toward friends, family, strangers. Yet when we stumble, our instinct is often merciless. We replay mistakes like a broken record, wield past failures as weapons against ourselves, and speak with an inner voice harsher than any enemy would dare. What Buddhist psychology insists is that this pattern isn't strength, it's neglect. Healing begins not when the world finally loves you enough, but when you stop abandoning yourself. In research terms, self-compassion has been shown to reduce anxiety and increase resilience more reliably than self-esteem alone. But centuries before the studies, the Buddha was pointing to the same principle. Your deepest stability is born not of praise or validation, but of a steady friendship with your own mind. Think of it this way: when a close friend is exhausted, you don't berate them for being weak, you offer rest. A kind word, maybe a smile that says, "I'm glad you're here." Yet when you're exhausted, your own dialogue might sound more like, "Why can't you handle this? You're failing again." The double standard is striking. Metta practice turns that imbalance around. It trains you to treat yourself with the same tenderness you'd offer anyone you cared for. And it's not abstract. One exercise I often give is painfully simple. In the morning, before your phone, before your to-do list, stand in front of a mirror. Instead of the usual inventory of flaws, "I look tired. I'm not enough." Try this. Smile gently and say, "I'm learning. I'm progressing." Notice the shift. The words don't erase difficulties, but they change the climate in which those difficulties unfold. Critics sometimes confuse self-compassion with indulgence. But the distinction is crucial. Indulgence says, I'll do whatever I want. Compassion says, I'll care for myself so I can show up wisely. When you treat your brokenness with patience, you aren't excusing it, you're creating the only conditions under which genuine growth is possible. A cracked seed doesn't need punishment, it needs light and water to sprout. Over the years, I've come to see that this is what being your own refuge really means. It isn't about isolation, nor about rejecting others' love. It's about no longer outsourcing your worth. When you can stand beside yourself even on your worst day, without turning away, without harshness, that's when resilience takes root. You stop fearing solitude, because solitude no longer means abandonment. Try this experiment. The next time you catch the thought, I'm not good enough, pause, place a hand over your heart and reframe. I'm human. I'm in process, and I'm worthy of kindness. Even now, that single gesture, repeated daily, reshapes the nervous system. Over time, the inner critic grows quieter, and the inner ally grows strong. The Buddha's line wasn't poetic fluff. It was a map. Attā, attano, nātho. You are the refuge you've been searching for. Others may walk beside you, but they cannot substitute for that friendship. And when you finally extend compassion inward, you discover a paradox. Far from making you self-absorbed, it frees you to love others more cleanly. Because only when you stop abandoning yourself do you stop demanding that others fill the hole. Lesson 4: Found the medicine of silence. Silence, when approached with awareness, is not an absence of life but a doorway into it. We live in a culture that prizes noise, constant input, constant productivity, constant distraction. The irony is that the very thing we flee, quiet, is what the Buddha pointed to as the ground of clarity. In the Pali texts, the word samatha often appears, tranquility, the calming of the mind. But tranquility is not a blank void, it's the state in which the scattered fragments of our attention settle, allowing us to see directly. In long years of study and practice, I've noticed a pattern. Most people don't actually fear silence itself. They fear what will surface in it. Unresolved grief, doubts, unmet needs. These are easier to mute with playlists, podcasts, or endless chatter. But the paradox is that those very feelings, once given space, often lose their sting. Silence is the laboratory where we discover this. Imagine driving. The habit is to flick on the radio immediately, to fill the car with voices and rhythms so the mind doesn't drift. But try something radical. Leave it off for just 2 minutes. In that gap, you might notice your breath rising and falling, the subtle hum of the engine, or the tension in your shoulders. And if you listen even deeper, you may catch the faint voice of your own inner life, the one that rarely gets airtime. It doesn't shout, it whispers. You're tired. You're longing for rest. You're stronger than you think. This is not the ego speaking, it is the part of you most aligned with truth. The Buddha once remarked, a disciplined mind brings happiness. Discipline here isn't harshness, it's the willingness to stay present long enough for the noise to dissolve. In meditation practice, silence is where the spinning mind finally shows itself. At first, it can be uncomfortable, even overwhelming, because the clutter rises to the surface. But that's precisely the point. You can't clear the water if you never let the sediment appear. And silence doesn't mean passivity. It's deeply active. It's a form of listening so profound that the usual filters fall away. In stillness, you notice that anger is actually fear in disguise. That sadness carries tenderness at its core. That beneath the restlessness is a longing for connection. These insights rarely arrive in the middle of noise. They bloom when the noise recedes. A personal observation. People who learn to sit quietly for even 5 minutes a day often report that their relationships shift. Why? Because when you stop running from yourself, you stop demanding that others fill your emptiness. You begin to listen more deeply, not just to your own heart but to the people around you. Silence with yourself becomes the training ground for presence with others. So here's a small experiment. Sometime this week, carve out a pocket of stillness. It doesn't have to look like monastic meditation. It could be sipping tea without your phone, walking without earbuds, or yes, driving 2 minutes with the radio off. Don't try to achieve anything. Just notice. Notice your breath, your body, your thoughts. Let them come, let them go. The practice is not about controlling the mind but about meeting it as it is. Over time, silence shifts from being something you avoid to something you crave, not because life gets quieter, but because you discover a quietness within that no noise can disturb. That is the medicine. It doesn't cure you by removing problems. It heals by reminding you that beneath every problem lies a stillness vast enough to hold it. Lesson 5: Return to the present moment. The Buddha taught that the only place life can ever truly be touched is here and now. The past is a memory trace, however vivid. The future is imagination, however convincing. What is real, what is alive, is the breath moving in your chest this instant. The sensations in your body, the sights and sounds arising in this moment. Yet most of us live almost entirely elsewhere. We replay arguments, regret choices, or rehearse scenarios that haven't happened. In doing so, we miss the one place healing and freedom are always available, the present. In my years of research and practice, I've seen how this works not just philosophically but biologically. When the mind drifts into regret or anxiety, the body mirrors it, heart rate spikes, muscles tense, cortisol rises. But when attention anchors in the present, through breath, sensation, or awareness, the nervous system shifts toward balance. The now isn't just spiritual poetry, it's medicine for both brain and body. Consider how often we time travel in a single day. Over coffee, you're already in a meeting that hasn't happened. While driving, you're reliving a mistake from yesterday. At night, you're building scenarios about tomorrow's worries. And all the while, the present, where your child's laughter, the taste of your meal, or the softness of the pillow exist, is overlooked. We live like guests who never meet the host. So how do we return? Buddhist practice calls it sati, mindfulness, the art of remembering the present. A simple tool from modern mindfulness teaching that echoes the Buddha's insight is the 5-4-3-2-1 method. Stop for a moment and do this. See 5 things around you: colors, shapes, details you usually ignore. Hear 4 sounds: distant traffic, birdsong, the hum of a fan, your own breath. Feel 3 sensations: feet on the floor, clothes against skin, air on your face. Smell 2 scents, maybe coffee, maybe nothing but the faint neutral air. Taste 1 thing, a sip of water, the aftertaste in your mouth. In less than a minute, your mind shifts gears from abstraction to embodiment. You are, unmistakably, here. Some resist the present because it feels too ordinary. They say, but the present is just dishes, bills, chores. Yet this is precisely the training, to see the sacred in the ordinary. A Zen master once said, when walking, walk. When eating, eat. The power lies in total presence, not in exotic experience. Washing dishes with full attention can reveal the warmth of water, the rhythm of breath, the fact that you're alive at all. Suddenly the mundane becomes luminous. Others avoid the present because it contains pain. But here is the paradox. When you stay with the present moment, even pain is manageable. Anxiety about the future multiplies pain into dread. Rumination about the past multiplies it into despair. But right here, right now, pain is just a sensation. 1 breath wide, stay with it, and it shifts, because everything conditioned shifts. Try this small practice, tonight. When you catch yourself spiraling into, what if, or, if only. Pause, ask, am I missing what's here? Then touch something tangible, your breath, the chair, the sound in the room. Anchor there for 3 breaths. You'll notice that life softens. Not because the world outside changed, but because you finally stopped abandoning the only place life is ever lived. The present moment is not just enough, it is everything. And when you learn to rest here, your heart begins to discover the peace it was chasing all along. Lesson 6: Traced pain back to its roots. The Buddha's map of liberation begins with a diagnosis. There is suffering, dukkha. But he doesn't stop there. He goes deeper, pointing to samudaya, the origin of suffering, as the second noble truth. In plain terms, pain doesn't appear out of nowhere. It has causes, and unless we see those causes clearly, no amount of distraction or positive thinking can uproot the patterns that keep hurting us. Consider the story of Arjun. As a boy, he makes a small mistake at school. Instead of gentle correction, his father lashes out in front of classmates. Shame burns his skin, laughter echoes in his ears, and the moment imprints itself deep in his nervous system. The event ends, But the wound lingers. Years later, as a capable adult, every minor criticism collapses him into anxiety. His hands tremble. His confidence dissolves. Outsiders might label him too sensitive. But what they don't see is the old root, humiliation never acknowledged, never healed. This is how most of our suffering works. On the surface, it looks like today's problem, an argument, a rejection, a fear of failure. But beneath the surface lies the root system, tangled and old. If we never pause to investigate, we keep treating symptoms while the disease thrives. It's like cutting weeds at the surface. They'll always grow back because the root remains intact. The Buddha compared the mind to a tree. When the root is unhealthy, the branches cannot flourish. Likewise, when we ignore the origin of emotional wounds, we may polish the exterior of our lives, careers, achievements, even smiles, but inside the roots are withering. Facing roots is uncomfortable, yes, but it is the only doorway to freedom. How do we begin this tracing? With stillness and honest inquiry. Instead of numbing out or forcing ourselves to move on, we can gently ask, when did this pain first begin? Why does this situation trigger me so deeply? What memory does this feeling carry in its shadow? Often, patterns reveal themselves. A fear of abandonment may trace back to childhood neglect. Perfectionism may trace back to conditional love. Distrust may trace back to betrayal. Seeing these connections doesn't make the pain vanish overnight, but it does loosen the chains. Because the moment you understand a cause, you're no longer fully captive to it. The Buddha said, to understand is to be free. He didn't mean intellectual understanding alone, but a deep recognition in the heart. This pain belongs to that old wound. Once recognized, you can respond differently. Instead of collapsing under criticism, Arjun might remind himself, this trembling is an echo from the past. I am not that boy anymore. With repetition, the old root weakens. This is not about blaming parents, partners, or fate. It's about reclaiming agency. If suffering has a cause, then by changing conditions, we can change the outcome. The root principle of dependent origination, paticcasamuppada, says that when a cause ceases, the effect ceases, and that's hope in its purest form. Try this reflection. The next time a reaction feels disproportionate, your anger surges too hot, your fear spikes too sharp, pause. Instead of shaming yourself, ask, what old root is this watering? Sit quietly and listen. You may not get an immediate answer, but the very act of asking plants the seed of insight. Over time, those roots come into view, and with awareness, they loosen. Tracing pain to its roots is not easy, but it is the difference between trimming branches forever and finally healing the tree. And when the roots are cared for, the whole being, mind, body, relationships, begins to flourish again. Lesson 7. Stop comparing myself to others. Comparison is one of the most subtle thieves of peace. It creeps in almost invisibly, through a glance at social media, a colleague's promotion, or a neighbor's new car, and before we realize it, our contentment dissolves. The Buddha never taught that we should pretend these impulses don't exist. He understood that the human mind is wired to measure itself. But he also offered a medicine, mudita, sympathetic joy, the capacity to celebrate the success and happiness of others as if it were our own. In my years of studying both Buddhist texts and human behavior, I've noticed how corrosive comparison becomes when it mutates into envy. Envy narrows our vision until we can see only what we lack, blinding us to the progress we've already made. Imagine watching a colleague get a promotion. The reflexive thought might be, why not me? I work hard too. That thought carries a sting. It suggests that someone else's gain is automatically your loss. Yet life isn't a zero-sum game. When we remember that, everything shifts. The practice of mudita offers a radical alternative. Instead of shrinking in resentment, we expand in joy. In the same situation, you might pause and say, congratulations. May your path continue to flourish. And may I walk steadily on mine. That doesn't erase your own ambitions, but it reframes them. You honor both journeys without making them rivals. Why is this so liberating? Because comparison places your worth on a sliding scale controlled by others. If they rise, you fall. If they shine, you dim. But with mudita, worth becomes non-competitive. The sun doesn't resent the moon, it simply shines in its own time. Your path, too, unfolds according to its conditions. By recognizing that every life has its own rhythm, you free yourself from the illusion of being behind. Modern psychology echoes this. Studies show that cultivating gratitude and joy for others reduces depressive symptoms and strengthens relationships. In a world saturated with curated highlight reels, mudita is almost revolutionary. It trains the heart to see abundance instead of scarcity. A simple exercise. When you notice envy arise, don't scold yourself. Just name it. Envy is here. Then, deliberately generate a counter thought. May they be happy. May they use their success well. At first, it may feel fake, but over time, the heart learns a new reflex: to meet others' joy with joy. The hidden gift is that mudita doesn't just benefit others, it heals you. Envy contracts the chest, tightens the jaw, and makes the world feel hostile. Sympathetic joy softens the body and opens the heart. You stop wasting energy on resentment and redirect it toward your own growth. So the next time a colleague advances, instead of whispering, "Why not me?" try, "Good for you. And I have my own timing." That small pivot is not denial, it's freedom. Because the moment you stop comparing, you step out of competition and into presence. And in presence, peace is finally possible. Lesson 8: Forgave myself and others. Few practices test the human heart like forgiveness. We often carry wounds from betrayal, humiliation, or abandonment, and the instinct is to hold on, to replay the injury, to wait for justice, to guard the scar as proof of what we've endured. Yet the Buddha offered a piercing insight in the Dhammapada, verse 5, hatred is never appeased by hatred. By non-hatred alone is hatred appeased. This is an eternal law. In other words, the fire of resentment cannot extinguish itself. Only its opposite, letting go, releasing, has that power. What most people misunderstand is that forgiveness is not about excusing wrong or pretending harm didn't happen. It is not a free pass for injustice. Forgiveness, in Buddhist psychology, is primarily an act of liberation for the one who has been hurt. Carrying resentment is like gripping hot coals and expecting the other person to burn. The truth is, you are the one scorched daily. To forgive is not to condone, it is to set the coals down. In my years of observing students, I've seen how unforgiveness tightens the body and narrows the mind. People become defined by the very thing they despise. The person who betrayed them may have moved on, yet they remain bound by invisible chains. The paradox is striking. By refusing to let go, they stay tied to the offender. Forgiveness severs that rope. It doesn't erase memory, but it removes poison from the wound. This also applies inward. Many find it harder to forgive themselves than anyone else. They live replaying choices not made, words they regret, chances they missed. Self-condemnation becomes a second punishment layered on top of the first. Here again, forgiveness doesn't mean denial. It means acknowledging imperfection and offering the same compassion you would to a dear friend. You don't free yourself by erasing mistakes. You free yourself by refusing to keep stabbing the wound. A practical reflection. When anger rises, pause and picture yourself carrying a heavy stone. Every grudge is another stone in the sack. Ask honestly, who suffers from this weight? Them, or me? Then, visualize setting the stone down. Nothing magical happens outwardly, the past event remains. But inwardly, lightness begins. This small gesture, repeated, rewires the heart toward release. And when the resistance comes, as it will, remember the Dhammapada's law: hatred never cancels hatred. If you want peace, you must plant non-hatred. Even a seed of willingness, "I'm not ready to forgive fully, but I'm willing to try," is enough to shift the current. The fruit of forgiveness is not weakness. It is strength of the rarest kind, the strength to refuse to be defined by pain. When you forgive, you declare that your story is larger than your wound. You reclaim authorship of your life. And in that act, you discover that forgiveness is not a favor you grant to others. It is the freedom you finally grant to yourself. Lesson 9: Practiced mindfulness in everyday life. When people hear the word mindfulness, they often imagine sitting cross-legged in silence, eyes closed, detached from ordinary life. But the Buddha's teaching of sati, mindful awareness, was never meant to be limited to the meditation cushion. It is a practice woven into every act of living: eating, walking, brushing your teeth, even answering the phone. Each moment is a chance to wake up from autopilot and step into presence. The genius of mindfulness lies in its simplicity. Whatever you are doing, you do only that, and you do it with full attention. When eating breakfast, for example, notice the crispness of the bread, the aroma of the coffee, the warmth spreading through your chest as you swallow. Most mornings, our hands move, but our minds are elsewhere, planning the day, scrolling through a feed, rehashing yesterday's conflicts. We eat, but we do not taste. We walk, but we do not arrive. Mindfulness invites us back to the reality already unfolding under our noses. The Buddha's teaching here is both profound and practical. The present moment is not a bridge to somewhere else, it is the very ground of life. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the foundations of mindfulness, he instructed his disciples to be aware when walking. He knows, I am walking, when eating. He knows, I am eating. Notice how ordinary that sounds. Yet in that ordinariness lies extraordinary freedom. As a researcher, I've often compared mindfulness to adjusting the lens on a camera. Suddenly, what was blurry becomes sharp. You begin to notice details that were always there. The play of sunlight on a wall, the texture of a bite of food, the rise and fall of breath. And the more you practice, the more your life feels vivid. Less like something you're rushing through and more like something you're inhabiting. Here's a simple experiment. Tomorrow morning, resist the reflex to grab your phone as soon as you wake. Instead, open your eyes, breathe, and feel the weight of the bed beneath you. When you brush your teeth, notice the bristles against your gums, the cool water on your tongue. When you walk to the kitchen, hear the rhythm of your steps. These small acts are not trivial, they are the training ground for presence. Why does this matter for healing? Because mindfulness interrupts the cycle of regret and worry. Regret drags you backward, worry flings you forward, but mindfulness anchors you here, where neither regret nor worry has full power. In this grounded state, the mind grows calmer, decisions grow clearer, and even difficulties feel more workable. The benefits ripple outward. In relationships, mindful listening means you hear someone's words instead of rehearsing your response. At work, mindful attention turns routine tasks into sources of focus and even satisfaction. In solitude, mindfulness transforms boredom into intimacy with your own being. So the next time you sit down to eat, try this. Put the phone away. Take one bite in silence. Feel the crunch. Taste the flavor. Breathe between bites. For those few seconds, you are fully alive. And that is the essence of mindfulness, not escaping life, but entering it completely, one ordinary act at a time. Lesson 10 treated every morning as a fresh start. One of the simplest yet most liberating truths in Buddhism is that life renews itself moment by moment. Each sunrise is not just another tick on the calendar, it is a natural reset. The Buddha often emphasized that every day, every breath, carries the possibility of rebirth, not only in the grand cosmic sense, but in the practical, psychological sense. Each morning, we are offered a chance to begin again, lighter than we were yesterday. Think of the sunrise itself. The sky does not carry the stains of the night before. It begins clean, painting itself anew. In the same way, human beings are invited to release yesterday's baggage, anger, regret, unfinished arguments, and meet the present as if for the first time. This isn't denial, it's wisdom. To cling to yesterday is to miss today. To carry resentment into the morning is to cloud the gift of a fresh beginning. I've seen how often people wake already heavy. Not because of the tasks ahead but because of the residue of the past. A harsh word from a partner, a mistake at work, an unresolved conflict. These hitchhike into the new day, coloring perception before it even begins. But the practice is to pause and ask, if today were the first day of my life, how would I choose to live it? That question alone can reset perspective. In Buddhist terms, this is the energy of virya, right effort. It doesn't mean forcing constant positivity. It means directing energy wisely toward what builds peace rather than perpetuates suffering. When you remind yourself that the past is memory and the future is imagination, you free yourself to engage with the one thing truly available, this day, this moment. Practical exercise. Tomorrow morning, before reaching for your phone or rehearsing yesterday's frustrations, sit quietly for just one breath cycle. Notice the light filtering through the window. Feel your body stretching awake. Whisper to yourself, today I have another chance. Today I can forgive, I can learn, I can begin. It may sound simple, but that small ritual plants the seed of a new mindset. The Buddha's wisdom here is compassionate and deeply human. No matter how many mistakes you've made, no matter how heavy yesterday felt, life hands you a blank page each morning. You cannot rewrite the old story, but you can decide what gets written next. And in that choice lies freedom. So instead of dragging yesterday's quarrels or regrets into today, pause and ask, if this were my first day, how would I show up? Perhaps with more patience, perhaps with more courage, perhaps with more joy. Every morning is an invitation to live as if life is beginning all over again, because in truth, it is. You've just walked through 10 lessons of healing, 10 reminders that the refuge you've been searching for is not outside, but within. But remember, healing is not a theory to admire from afar. It is something you practice, breath by breath, choice by choice. Even the smallest step, one gentle thought in the morning, one act of letting go at night, has the power to shift the entire course of your day. So let me invite you. Don't just close this video and move on. Take it with you. Carry one seed of these teachings into tomorrow. Seedling. Comment below and share with us. What is the very first thing you will choose to let go of tomorrow morning? Your answer might inspire someone else who is still searching for courage. If this message touched your heart, subscribe to Dharma Veins and join us on this journey of healing and awakening. And please, share this video with at least one person you know is carrying a heavy burden. You may not realize it, but that simple act could be the light that saves their heart today. Before we part, let us hold a moment of silence together. May the blessings of the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha extend to all beings. May compassion reach those suffering under natural disasters, war, and hardship. May every soul, wherever they are, find safety, strength, and peace. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be at ease. May all beings find the courage to begin again. And now, I leave you with this question to carry in your heart. If every morning is a new page, what story will you choose to write tomorrow?